All right, so today we're diving into a whole bunch of stuff, really. Health, energy, even a little bit about
A
space.
little bit of everything. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, we've got articles, research,
Lots to unpack.
yeah. You might actually want to grab a notepad. This is,
Could be some aha moments.
yeah, definitely some aha moments. Okay, so let's start with this Financial Times article. It's about Norway, basically, hitting the brakes on energy ties with the EU.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, prices are going crazy. And the article actually uses this phrase, a green balloon bursting,
Wow.
to describe what's going on. It feels very symbolic, like
Yeah,
more than just numbers.
it's definitely not just the numbers, no. Um,
Yeah, so what are the implications here?
well, I think, Norway has been this big supplier of natural gas to the EU. Um, so this shift really prioritizes their own needs, and I think it throws a bit of a wrench into Europe's energy security plans. And I think it makes you wonder, are we going to see more cracks forming within the EU? Or maybe even like a trend towards countries kind of going inwards when it comes to energy?
Yeah, like every man for himself.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it really does make you think about the long-term consequences.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's funny because this article made me think about this book we have, and it's arguing that our, mental health crisis is actually like a symptom of a much bigger problem.
Mhm.
The author, this is wild, actually calls mental health care the new opium of the people.
Wow, that's
It's intense, right? Like,
strong words.
yeah, like we're being almost pacified instead of actually pushing for change.
Well, I think what the author's trying to say is that by hyper-focusing on individual well-being, we kind of like overlook all those systemic issues that are fueling this whole crisis in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? Things like, I don't know, economic inequality, social isolation, lack of purpose in your work, like all these big problems. And it kind of makes you wonder,
Yeah.
like how do we balance that individual care with addressing those bigger like societal structures that are kind of letting people down?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so we've got this potential energy crisis, maybe shaking things up in Europe,
Yeah,
and this idea that like our mental health struggles are maybe this canary in the coal mine for like bigger societal problems.
definitely.
Okay, now totally different topic.
Right.
This Dutch article, basically it's taking a very strong stance against a doctor's views on contraception
Hmm.
and basically saying that he's spreading misinformation.
Okay.
So, I mean, without taking sides here, like,
Sure.
what's at the heart of this whole controversy?
Well, it sounds like this doctor has voiced concerns about certain contraceptive methods,
Mhm.
their effectiveness, the side effects, things like that. And the article's really pushing back, saying that these claims lack scientific backing, um, you know, could actually discourage women from using contraception altogether,
Yeah.
which could put their health at risk.
Yeah.
And I think it raises this bigger discussion, right?
Yeah.
You know, like who gets to be the authority on medical knowledge? And how do we make sure patients have good information, accurate information,
Yeah.
to make those choices about their health?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes you think about like how crucial it is to have like clear and reliable information, especially when you're talking about, healthcare.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially something as personal as that.
Exactly. And, speaking of controversies, we have this study from Children's Health Defense.
Oh, okay.
And it's claiming that women who haven't gotten the COVID vaccine, are reporting similar menstrual irregularities to those who have been vaccinated. So can you kind of walk us through the findings here? Like, what should we make of this?
Well, so the study looked at, I think it was self-reported data
Mm.
from a group of women, some vaccinated, some not.
Right.
And basically they found that both groups were reporting these changes to their cycles,
Mm.
like irregular periods or heavier bleeding,
Yeah.
things like that. And their conclusion is, that this points to a potential link between actually getting COVID itself, like regardless of vaccination status,
Okay.
and these menstrual irregularities.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely raises some questions,
Yeah, for sure.
sparks some curiosity for some more research.
Yeah, for sure. It feels like with health and medicine, there's
Yeah.
always something new to consider.
Always evolving.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's zoom out to like the global stage for a sec. We've got this lecture from Dr. Benny Pizer.
Okay.
He's the director of the Global Warming Policy Foundation. And he's basically saying that the consensus on climate change is actually fracturing.
Hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah, so,
And
I mean,
so he's saying that basically the global effort to tackle climate change
Mhm.
is kind of falling apart.
Well, he paints a picture of um, a much more divided approach to climate action than we might think.
Yeah.
You know, he's arguing that all the focus on financial compensation and the economic weight of these, net zero policies
Hmm.
is distracting from finding like practical solutions that work environmentally and economically. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like this almost like, are you seeing a connection here to, like, earlier we were talking about like these potential systems breaking down?
Oh, yeah.
And is he kind of saying the same thing might be happening with the global approach to climate change?
I think so. Yeah. That maybe that assumed agreement that we thought we had is kind of starting to crumble.
Yeah.
And that does make you wonder, how do you find solutions when everybody's got a different idea of what the problem even is, right?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Okay, so before we get too deep into all the serious stuff, I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and talk about some science.
Okay. Sounds good.
I mean, there's some really mind-blowing stuff to talk about here. So for starters, we have this study from the Salk Institute, and it reveals that, get this, what your immune cells eat can actually change their identity.
What?
Yeah, it sounds like sci-fi, right?
That's wild. How does that even work?
I mean, I know. Can you explain that?
Well, it sounds like they found that the specific nutrients that immune cells take in can actually, like, change their function and their behavior.
Wow.
Right. So, for example, some nutrients might make them really good at fighting off viruses.
Okay.
Others might make them better at going after bacteria.
Wow. I mean, what are the implications here? Are we talking about like giving our immune cells like a superfood smoothie to like boost our health?
Well, I mean, it's not quite that simple, but the idea is that, if we could figure out what the specific, I guess, nutritional needs are for different types of immune cells,
Yeah.
we might be able to make really targeted therapies,
Mhm.
that can boost their ability to fight off diseases or
Yeah.
even, like, suppress unwanted immune responses.
Wow.
So, I mean, it could change how we treat everything from, autoimmune disorders to cancer.
I mean, this is what I love about these deep dives. You just never know what mind-blowing thing is going to be around the corner. Speaking of blowing minds, let's zoom out from like the microscopic to the cosmic for a minute.
Right.
We've got research from the Max Planck Institute, and they've found that stars, like our sun, can actually produce these massive, like, super flares.
Pseudo flares.
Yeah, way more often than we thought, like about once a century. So can you, paint us a picture here? Like, what would one of these super flares actually look like?
Okay, so, I mean, picture this. A sudden, like, blinding flash of light erupting from the sun's surface, and then this enormous surge of charged particles, like, hurtling towards Earth. I mean, at, like, unimaginable speeds.
Oh,
It would be spectacular, but I think it would also be a little bit terrifying,
right.
to be honest. Now, I mean, our sun does have flares,
Right.
but we've never seen anything like these super flares.
Yeah.
But the fact that they happen relatively often
Yeah.
in stars like ours, I mean, it means it's not impossible for our sun to have one too.
It's kind of like a reminder that even like, our sun, which seems so constant and reliable,
Yeah, total.
is capable of like some really incredible and maybe terrifying things.
The universe is a powerful place.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so let's bring things back down to earth and
Okay.
talk about some health concerns that are making headlines.
Sure.
So first up, we have experts raising a red flag about Ozempic, the weight loss drug,
I've heard about this.
saying it might be a serious risk for cancer patients
Okay.
and could potentially make like some treatments less effective.
So how does that work?
Yeah.
Like, how is a weight loss drug impacting cancer treatments?
I know.
This seems strange.
It's so strange. Yeah, it's like, it is a reminder that even with like medical advancements,
Right.
there's always this balancing act between,
The benefits and the risks.
right, yeah.
Exactly. So it looks like Ozempic, which is what's called a GLP-1 receptor agonist, and to clarify for our listener,
Yeah.
that basically means it works by, like, mimicking a hormone that helps regulate blood sugar research, suggests that it could be interfering with certain chemo drugs.
Oh, why?
That's especially those used for, like, breast cancer.
Okay.
So basically, because Ozempic slows down digestion,
Mm-hmm.
it could also slow down how those chemo drugs are absorbed, potentially making them less effective.
That goes back to our point earlier about like needing accurate medical information. Like patients need to know all the facts to make these decisions.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Especially with something as serious as cancer.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive,
No.
we have this study that's connecting two health problems that you might not think are related at all. Brain inflammation and muscle fatigue after, like, infections or injuries. I mean, it seems like our bodies are even more interconnected than we realize. So can you break down this connection for us?
Yeah, so basically they found that after you have an infection or an injury, your brain actually sends out these inflammatory signals that can travel to your muscles. And that causes that feeling of, like, fatigue and weakness.
Oh, wow.
So it's not always the injury itself
Yeah.
that's causing the fatigue. It could be your brain's response to it.
So that completely changes, like, how we think about recovering from, illness or injury. I mean, if brain inflammation is part of the problem, could that open up, like, new ways to treat muscle fatigue or even, like, speed up recovery?
Yeah, I mean, that's what researchers are looking into, you know. It really highlights how important it is to treat the whole body. Not just focus on the most obvious symptom. It's like, solving a puzzle.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to look beyond the individual pieces to see the bigger picture.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's amazing how much we've uncovered already. It feels like every time we turn a corner, there's like another layer of complexity.
It really does make you realize how connected everything is.
Right.
I mean, from energy to, like, the tiniest cells.
It's all connected.
Yeah. Okay, speaking of those tiny cells, we've got this research from the Karolinska Institute,
Okay.
and it's, all about these more efficient healthcare approaches. So imagine, being screened for liver damage at the same time you're getting your eyes checked.
At the same time.
Yeah. And that's what they're proposing for people with type 2 diabetes.
Wow. That's a really interesting idea
Yeah.
because, a lot of people with type 2 diabetes
Mhm.
end up developing fatty liver disease
Right.
without even knowing it.
Yeah, it's silent.
Silent, yeah. So if you could catch it early,
Yeah.
you could treat it early and, maybe prevent some serious problems later on.
Yeah, it's all about prevention, which is always good. Okay, so remember that study we talked about the diet of immune cells?
Oh, yeah, that was wild.
Right, and how it can change their identity?
Mhm.
Well, researchers are taking that even further now,
Okay.
and they're thinking about using it to develop, like, personalized immune therapies. I mean, it's like,
Almost like science fiction,
right?
like designing a meal plan for your immune cells.
Yeah. I mean, so walk me through this.
The idea is that, if you can figure out what, like, the specific metabolic needs are
Mm,
for different immune cell populations,
right.
you could create these therapies that deliver the exact nutrients they need to, like,
Yeah.
function at their best.
Yeah.
So almost like, boosting their ability to fight off a specific infection
Yeah.
or disease.
Wow. I mean, are we, like, on the verge of, this whole new era of, like, personalized medicine?
It feels like it,
Yeah.
where the treatments are really tailored to each person's, like, biology.
So cool.
Yeah, it is exciting, but I think it's important to remember this is
Mhm.
still very early research,
Right.
but it's really cool to think about the potential.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so, speaking of potential, I want to go back to that super flare discovery for a second.
Oh yeah, those super flares.
Yeah,
Kind of scary.
I know. I mean, it's amazing, right? Like, awe-inspiring, but it also makes you think,
Yeah, like what about our sun?
right, like, is he going to have one of those too? I mean, I guess it's all about perspective, right?
Well, I think it's a good reminder, right?
Yeah.
That even the things that seem the most constant,
Yeah.
the most reliable, they're still capable of some pretty dramatic stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It's humbling. Okay, so let's shift gears back to healthcare. Let's talk about Relinta. It's a blood clot drug.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that one.
It's, prescribed to prevent future clots after, a heart attack or stroke.
But it seems like there's some debate about how effective it is and also about potential side effects.
Right, because anytime you're messing with the blood's ability to clot, there can be complications.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like that balance
The
again.
benefits and the risks.
Right, exactly. So, just for clarity for our listeners, Brilinta, it's also known as Ticagrelor,
Okay.
and it has been shown to be, pretty effective at preventing these clots.
Right.
But there are those concerns about bleeding complications.
Yeah. And I think that really highlights how important it is to, keep monitoring these medications.
Right.
Even after they've been approved.
Yeah.
And for doctors and patients to be really open about, what are the potential benefits and what are the potential risks.
Yeah. It's complicated, but it does underscore, I think, the need for patients to really be involved in their own healthcare decisions.
To be active participants.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so one last thing I want to touch on in this part of our deep dive, and I think this is something that's going to resonate with a lot of our listeners. It's about screen time.
Oh, okay.
And the impact it has on young kids.
Yeah, that's a big one these days.
I mean, it's everywhere, right?
It really is.
So we came across this study, and it found a possible link between excessive screen time in preschoolers
Right.
and a decrease in sleep quality,
Oh, wow.
which then can lead to, behavioral issues.
Makes sense. I mean, if you're not sleeping well,
Right.
you're not going to behave well.
Yeah.
It's like, it makes you wonder
Yeah.
if screen time is actually contributing to this bigger problem that we keep talking
Yeah.
about.
Exactly.
Like as a society.
Right. I mean, if it's affecting sleep, behavior, maybe even mental well-being,
Yeah,
it's something we need to figure out. We
Every-
need to promote those healthy habits.
exactly. Finding that balance,
Yeah.
making sure kids are getting enough sleep,
Mm.
doing other activities.
Yeah, exactly.
All about balance and making, good choices for those kids.
Welcome back. It's amazing how much ground we covered in this deep dive.
Yeah, we've been all over the place.
I mean, from energy politics to the tiniest cells in our bodies.
And space. Don't forget about space.
Yeah, super flares. It's a lot, but hopefully it's giving you a fresh perspective on
On some of the big things happening.
yeah, some of the big things happening in our world. As we wrap up, I'd love to hear what stood out to you most from today. What were some of the things that really resonated?
One thing that kept coming up for me was this idea of systems under stress.
Oh, interesting.
We saw with Europe and energy, with Norway,
Hey.
breaking away.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, how stable are these networks? And are we going to see some big shifts in global power?
Yeah, totally.
And then we saw it again with the mental health crisis, where the book we looked at argued that the way we're approaching mental health now, it might actually be masking deeper problems.
Right, yeah, these societal issues that need to be...
Exactly. And that theme even popped up again with climate change,
Yeah, with Dr. Peiser's lecture.
Yeah. He was talking about this fracturing consensus.
Yeah.
And it highlights how hard it is to find solutions
Right.
when you can't even agree on the problem,
Exactly.
So it seems like, no matter where you look,
Yeah.
there's this tension between individual needs and the demands of these big systems.
Yeah, it's a constant push and pull.
Totally. Another thing that really stuck with me today was this need for good information,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
accurate information.
Mhm.
The contraception debate, the concerns about Ozempic, it shows how important it is for people to have the right facts,
Especially with health.
especially with health.
Yeah.
We need to be really careful about the information we're getting.
Yeah, and not just take everything at face value.
Exactly. Question things, look for different perspectives,
It's we have to be detectives in this world of information.
Exactly. But, it wasn't all doom and gloom today.
No, definitely not.
I mean, some of those scientific discoveries, they were really exciting.
Oh, yeah, that was my favorite part.
Right. The stuff about, the immune cell diets
Mhm.
and how we might be able to create these, personalized therapies.
Yeah.
And then, learning about those super flares, it reminds me of,
The power of the universe.
yeah, and how much we still don't know.
Yeah, it's humbling.
It is. And that makes me optimistic,
Yeah, I mean, it's we're constantly learning and growing.
Exactly. And that's what I love about these deep dives,
Mhm.
You get to, really engage with these big ideas,
Yeah.
challenge your assumptions, and just, come away with this richer understanding of the world.
Well said. So as you go about your day, think about those, those big systems and how they might be under stress. Think about information and being a really good detective when it comes to information.
Yeah.
And, remember the potential of scientific discovery.
The power of science.
Yeah. So how do these ideas resonate with you? What questions do they spark for you? That's something for you to think about as we wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep your mind open to, all the amazing possibilities out there.